Liam, we're squared at one, so it's a best of three series starting tonight. Okay, so what does this mean, mate? Is it back to square one? Do we go from ground zero, or those first two games, the lessons learned have to be absorbed first?
Yeah, well, from a numbers perspective, of course, it's a best of three series. So you sort of start from square one because we're all tied up at 1-1. But I think you're right when you suggest that the lessons from those first couple of games come into play. No doubt about it. The Breakers were able to get some freedom of movement, some action for Will McDowell-White in that first game, and as a result, everybody felt comfortable and everybody knocked down shots. But the Kings responded. They crawled in, they got physical, they made life tough for the ball handlers, and then as a result, I think everything was a little bit difficult for the Breakers in that game too. So I think that the onus is now on the Breakers really to come into Kudos Bank Arena tonight and try to come up with some answers to get themselves going again.
Look, it was all about the shooting, wasn't it? And we had Modi Mayor on the program earlier in the week, and I repeated to him that Casey Fragger described it as putrid. You know, you go from 95 points in that first game. 74 was garbage time scoring as well, because the Breakers, up until that third quarter, just weren't firing anything at all. Are those just off nights, or is that fundamentally down to a different way that the Kings play defence?
Look, they had some open shots. They had some good looks, no doubt about it. So you look at them and you say, well, they're open shots, they're good looks, we should knock them down, and we did in game one. But you can't not credit that Sydney defence. It's built around pressure, intensity, impacting the ball, making guys feel like, they're under pressure at all times, and that's what they were able to do in game two. So they deserve credit for the fact that the Breakers were unable to sort of tick the scoreboard over. And really it starts with the ball. The Kings like to put their couple of big guys in the paint and leave them there, and then their guys on the perimeter are supposed to put a whole bunch of pressure out on the ball, and that began with Justin Simon on Will McDowell-White. Right from the opening tip, he was up, he was in. It was tough for Will McDowell-White throughout the game, and you saw those three consecutive turnovers and steals from Justin Simon in that third quarter that completely swayed the game. And that's a result of just constantly building pressure, possession after possession. So that's the key battleground tonight. Can the Breakers find ways to free McDowell-White up to play make for himself and for his teammates and, get that scoreboard ticking over again?
NBL overtime. Liam Santamaria with us. Game 3 tonight. And look, there's so much sport on. I might have to press record and watch this after I watch the league and everything else, Liam. Who's the better teammate? And is it even possible to absolutely accurately answer that question after the first two games?
Oh, I think it's very hard to answer that question. This series is on a knife's edge. You got to recognize the Kings for what they've done over the past 12 to 18 months. They went into last year's final series as the number one seed. They swept that grand final series, so they're defending champs. They come into this playoff series as the number one seed, and they bounced back in what I think was really historic fashion in game two. Under all the circumstances, on the road, down 1-0 with your two best players injured and banged up and really not playing throughout most of that game. To do what they did was really impressive. But as I've been telling you throughout the season, this Breakers team is made of really tough stuff, and they have the pieces to win this championship. So when all is said and done, who's the better team? Well, we're going to find that out over the next couple of games.
Who is capable of making the key adjustments quicker? Which team?
Sorry, man, I missed the first part of that question.
Liam, who's capable of making the key adjustments quicker? Which of the teams?
Really good question. Because the Kings are built around a style of play that doesn't change much throughout the season and from game to game. They do what they do, and their focus is on doing it really well. Whereas the Breakers under Modi Mayor have a bunch of different ways they can go about things that they turn to, but from one game to the next and also mid-game. But I will say I was really impressed with the adjustments that Chase Buford made mid-game the other night at Spark Arena. He was having to find some solutions through having to turn to some funky lineups that they hadn't played much before. He was having to go to some things like the zone with the two centers, Jordan Hunter and Tim Suarez out there, that they hadn't really done much over the course of the season. And he did that really, really effectively. So we've got two outstanding coaches in this series, constantly looking to make little tweaks here and there. And I think both of them to this point are doing a really great job.
We got a series. That's what the coolest thing about it. Look, when I watch the NBA finals, and I love my Major League Baseball as well, mate. What I love when I'm sitting down for a whole series, and I love a 7-game series, is that you can just get the complete contrast between performances. You can get a blowout this week. I mean, and then you can get absolutely and utterly smacked here, and yet you can turn that around and you can claw that one back. And that's what we've got, which is so good for any neutral fan especially. I mean, it's a nightmare, obviously, for the coaches of these teams. And if you are an absolute diehard of either team, I mean, you're sitting there gnawing your nails. But, you know, if you actually just love your basketball and love this game, love this contest, this is what we want, isn't it?
100%. And when they tip off Game 3 tonight, the scoreboard says 0-0. So that's the beautiful thing. Everybody starts afresh at the beginning of this game. You know, Sydney were licking their wounds after Game 1, saying, man, Will McDowell-White tore us to shreds. 19-9-9, like, that's an unbelievable stat line, and he controlled that game. And you think, well, do they have an answer for Will McDowell-White? They didn't really change a lot. They just did what they do, but they did it better, and they completely shut him down. 6 turnovers after 0 turnovers in Game 1. Like, they completely turned that on its head. So that's the onus now on the Breakers to say, all right, well, we couldn't get anything going offensively in Game 2. Their defensive pressure was too much. Now Mody Mayor and that group, that coaching staff, that playing roster needs to come up with the answers. And you're right. That's the beauty of the series. It's punch and counter punch, move and counter move from one game to the next. And I'm fascinated to see how it plays out tonight in Sydney.
I mean, you spend so much time watching it, and you look at it with a different set of eyes than most of us do. And most people, I think, when you're watching a game of basketball, we love the offense. We love the slammer jammer. We love all of that kind of stuff because it's spectacular. But is this more about the down and dirty stuff? Is that what's going to win this?
I think so, yeah. These are two elite defensive teams. And when we talk about adjustments, predominantly they have been taking place at the defensive end, especially, certainly from the Kings' perspective. But, yeah, these teams are both, as I said, elite defensive teams. They're going to bring it defensively. But coming into this Game 3, I feel like the focus for the Breakers actually needs to be offensively. Like we've been talking about here, their D has been solid. It's been good. They've been making life tough. But it was like drawing teeth at the offensive end in Game 2. So usually as the adjustments, the coaches are devising different coverages and strategies to churn up their defense. But I think for the Breakers coming into this Game 3, it's a little more about how do we create a bit more space and freedom and opportunity at the offensive end.
NBL overtime. Liam Santamaria with us. All right, 2 quick questions before we let you go. Just in terms of the standard of the finals, is it an improvement on last year? Where do you kind of rate it? I mean, these two teams.
Oh, do you know what? Like, I'm a purist. For me, as you say, like, some people are looking for the slam dunks, the highlight reel plays, running up big scores on the scoreboard. You know what? Whatever gets it done in a championship series is what it's all about. These teams were dry in the first quarter in Game 2. The scores were really low, but I loved the battle.
Go on.
I mean, the battle was in the trenches, and they were just trying to see who could get themselves going. So really, in terms of the aesthetics, these are elite players, world-class players and teams going at it. So the standard's always going to be pretty high. And whether it's high scoring, low scoring, all that matters is that your team has more points than the other one when all is said and done.
Call it then, pal. Who gets it tonight?
I think the Breakers. I think that, they've got what it takes. I picked them for the series. I picked them in 4 games, and I'm sticking with it. I think it's all New Zealand over the course of this weekend.